All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Effective Landing Pages. I'm Brian Del Monte and want to make sure that everyone can hear me and whatnot. If you could quick give me a shout out that you can hear me, that you can see the video, all that good stuff. I imagine you can, but just let me know for certain if there are any issues. Let me take a look here. Okay, so it sounds like people are able to hear me, which is good. Just let me know in the question and answer box if there's anything going on. Sometimes it's best to just reconnect with GoToWebinar. I'm directly connected to the internet. I'm not on wireless or something like that. So if you can't hear me, probably will be you before it's me. Good. So people are seeing the screens. It sounds like everything's good to go. This is going to be roughly an hour of a presentation, followed by question and answers. I have a hard stop 90 minutes from now, but that should be plenty of time to go through everything. I want to thank everybody for being here, and let's get started with an overview of what we're going to talk about today. Now, let me just say two things. One, this is being recorded, so you'll be able to look at it later. And two, I am going to make this deck available. So don't worry if you can't read everything that you see at the moment. You will be able to see it perfectly in the PDFs that I'll distribute afterwards. We're going to discuss really, 6 things. We're going to discuss why landing pages at all. An overview of what they are and why you're using them in the first place. I think the conversation should start there based on what I've seen as landing pages. It's not always clear to me that people understand what the purpose is. The second thing we're going to focus on is understanding basically purchasing behavior, or how I call it, a quick introduction to how admin think about sales and advertising. Because ultimately your landing page is about trying to get somebody to do something, whether it's follow through to a next page or buy a product or get an email. And so you need to understand that behavior that leads to that outcome. We're going to talk about the science of headlines. About 85% of your success on your landing page really boils down to the first 4 seconds of your headline. And so we're going to talk about the strategies to write a killer headline. And I'm not going to talk about it in terms of the formula for, and I know you've seen them, I've seen them too, this is how you write the curiosity formula, this is how you write, the list formula. That's not what this is going to be about. I'm going to discuss really by using advertising and what I've been taught about how to recognize a big idea and turn it into a good headline. We're going to talk about how to build rapport with readers and how to basically make people like you by reading your material. We're going to have a discussion about creativity and landing page design. And then finally, to close it all, we're going to talk about conversion-based design and how to drive conversion. The whole point of the landing page is to make people do something. In other words, we need them to convert to our message. So that's what we're going to talk about over the next hour. So let's get into it and begin with the simple question of why landing pages at all. Now, a lot of people just use their homepage. A lot of people just use a post as a landing page, right, for a given topic. The reason why you want a landing page really boils down to something that Seth Godin said in one of the training that I was in with him, where he said, essentially he was counseling agencies and people who were in marketing, and he said, when you review a landing page, the thing you have to ask yourself is, what does the person who built this page want me to do? The purpose of a landing page is to compel action. It's essentially direct response marketing. And since essentially all marketing is on the internet, most of the marketing that's done is being done through landing pages because it's some sort of direct response activity. There's really 5 types of pages. And I'm going to talk about most of these and give examples of most of these in this presentation. There's a click-through page, and that's when you present an idea and you want them to, the conversion you want is for them to click to look at a price guide, to look at a product guide, to look at a video. In other words, the conversion you want is literally for them just to take the next step of engagement with you. Not as common on the internet as it used to be, but I'll show you examples. It's still used reasonably frequently. Second most common form that I think a lot of people are familiar with is the lead generation. Here's my page, get this benefit, give me your email, or call this number. Lot of landing pages boil down to lead generation. Sales pages. By far the most common type of landing page on the internet. It's very straightforward. Here's my product. Here's the price. Buy now. Okay. Fourth type of page, which you may or may not have heard of, is really an SEO or cornerstone content landing page. Now, the idea for this type of landing page is to develop backlinks for SEO purposes. Let's say you write on 4 or 5 different categories in your blog, and you over time build up a fair amount of material on those categories. You can organize that material into landing pages on the given subject matter. So for example, let's say I had 30 or 40 articles on building landing pages. Well, I could build a cornerstone content landing page that summarizes and organizes all of my other posts. The advantage of that, and this is not something I'm going to go into deep into this seminar, but the advantage of that is those types of pages naturally accrue backlinks because they wind up as resources for others to cite to. And so this is a strategy that's been used very successfully, largely by internet marketers in order to drive long-term SEO by organizing thousands of articles into cornerstone pieces that then develop lots and lots of backlinks. Now, if you're using WordPress, this process happens somewhat automatically through category and author pages. And so when those category pages and author pages are indexed, they're essentially cornerstone pages. They may not be indexed the way that you want, which is why SEO experts generally make their own cornerstone content landing pages. And the final type of landing page is essentially a referral advocacy landing page. And you see that primarily on single issue campaigns, usually around politics, or in humanitarian efforts. There was a landing page that went viral about stopping child soldiers, getting the U.S. to change its policy on child soldiers in Africa. Okay, and basically the page wanted you to contact your member of Congress. Okay, so that's a referral where I want you to go do something else. Usually it's offline or some sort of advocacy position where you're being asked to think and do something versus, buy or give me your email or, the other types of activities. So that's why it's its own thing. So those are the 5 types of pages essentially you'll see as a landing page. And generally what you'll be doing is click-through, lead gen, or sales pages. Okay, with lead gen and sales pages being the most common, but I'm going to talk mostly today about click-through, lead gen, and sales page with an emphasis on lead gen and sales pages because that's what most people are doing. Whatever you're doing in a landing page, it really doesn't matter what type it is or what industry you're in or, really anything else. The entirety of a sales page, whether it's online or in print, has 6 components to it. There's a unique proposition. It describes a concrete benefit. It contains something that's desirable. It assuages the fear of the purchase. It provides proof that there's value in the purchase. And it provides a singular focus point of conversion. Those are the elements of an exceptional landing page. Now, seems simple, but you'd be surprised how many times one or more of these elements are missing. Okay? Most common that are unclear or confused are the proposition, the unique proposition, a failure to describe a concrete benefit, making clear of what's desirable, not overcoming objections and fear, and having too complicated of a conversion path. These 6 components essentially correspond very closely to what are the basic elements of a landing page. Whoops. The basic elements of a landing page are the headline, the subhead, the body copy, dealing with objections, presenting credentials, and the close. Now, in a landing page with all 6 of these elements, that's essentially the order in which they are presented. Headline, subhead, body copy, objections, credentials, and close. At the very minimum, you have to have headline, subhead, and close, or I suppose if you really want to be minimalistic, you can have headline and close. And I'll actually show you ones that do that. They're somewhat non-conventional, but these are the elements. Your landing page must have these elements. And so if you look at templates for landing pages by pretty much anyone, they're going to always have headline, body copy, and close at the minimum. And the new ones all tend to have all 6 elements. Let me show you how this works across different industries. Okay, now these pages I'm going to show you, I know that they're among the highest conversion pages essentially that there are. All of these pages convert over 25-30%. So here's this company, Manpax. Okay, they have a headline, they have the close. Now granted, the close happens right away, so this goes headline, subhead, close. Then they have credentials, they have their body copy, they're dealing with objections. We'll talk about Manpax later. It's kind of a silly service, but they have a very well-designed landing pages. Okay, this is from Unbounce. Very effective landing page. It's very minimalistic. Headline and close. Get higher conversions from your landing pages. Headline and close. Here's another one from Unbounce. This is for their actual service. Headline, subhead, close, and then you don't see the rest of the landing page, but then it deals with body copy, objection, credentials. Okay. 37 Signals used to own Basecamp. Somebody else, I think, owns Basecamp now. I forget who bought it. But Basecamp has designed over the years, if you want to use the Internet Wayback Machine, they have designed over the years, without question, some of the best landing pages that I have ever seen. I'm not sure who's done their stuff. I think all their stuff is done in-house, but it is the best stuff I've ever seen. Headlines, subheads, body copy, they have great design, they have great credentials, they did great with objections. I'll show you some other ones later about dealing with objections, and they have a very high closure rate. Outbrain, these are the people who make those silly, recommended for you, 22 secrets you won't believe number 7, right? So they syndicate other people's content. It's a very good landing page. It's got a great headline, great subhead. You can pretty much gather everything right away from above the fold. Okay, it's a clear value proposition. It's a clear desirability. They've got great style and design. We'll talk about why that's the case in a little bit, but it's a very, very strong landing page. Okay, now, there are exceptions to this 6 elements. Now, truly as an example of an exceptionally good landing page that doesn't follow any of this, in part because they accomplish a lot of the other activities that a landing page normally would do through mass media branding. Okay, if you go to Trulia, you know what it is. And you want instant satisfaction. I want to know how much my house is worth. So this one's literally headline, subhead, close. Okay. Bills.com. This is an interesting landing page. When you go to the page, you get immediately taken to a calculator that essentially tries to figure out how much debt you have. It's a lead gen page. Tries to figure out how much debt you have and demonstrate how quickly it can help you get out of that debt. Okay. Really not much in the way of a headline. The close is very strong. Again, the people that are coming to it, they're already very conditioned. And we're going to talk about mindset when somebody comes to your landing page. It matters. Now, Conversion Lab doesn't follow all of the rules, in part because they have a 2-step process. And you're starting to see more and more of this, where it's a click-through lead gen page, I guess, for the best way to describe it, because the whole purpose of clicking on this thing, okay, get help with landing pages, is it results in this activity, where you then can put in your information. These are very effective because you get little buy-ins along the way, okay? But it's an exception to the rules, and so I did want to point them out. But for most people, these are sophisticated designed pages, okay, that are part of broader media strategies. I'd also point that out as well. But for your landing page, it's going to have those 6 elements, okay? The headline, the subhead, the body copy, the objections, credentials, and the close. And of what we're going to talk about today, the 3 most important are headline, body copy, and close. In order, it would be headline, close, and body copy, okay, in terms of importance. To understand why these pages work, I think we have to understand purchasing behavior, okay? And that brings us to the next idea, understanding purchase behavior and purchase intent. And whether or not you're actually trying to make a sale or get them to give you your email or anything else, understand above all else, you're wanting people to pay you with their time and attention. And attention is by far the most scarcest resource that exists. So every landing page at its most basic level is asking for one of the most scarcest resources that exists, which is someone's time. And you have to understand what is going to get anybody to pay attention to you. I'm reminded of a very famous quote by Napoleon Bonaparte. A man does not have himself killed for half a pence a day for a petty distinction. You must speak to the soul in order to electrify him. And that is the truth. If you don't speak to people at a very basic level in understanding their behaviors, you won't get them to pay attention. In all of the time that I've done marketing and advertising, there's really only 3 buckets. And every strategy, every campaign I've ever done, everything, that I've ever put together, and landing pages, we're going to talk about, landing pages are an ad. Okay, they're a very specific type of ad. They're a direct response ad, but they're an ad. And to get somebody to pay attention to an ad, you got to appeal to really one of 3 buckets. People buy for 3 reasons. It speaks to them, it makes life better, it keeps us from having our heads explode. Okay, now let me go through each one of those a little more in detail. It speaks to them, okay? Over half of all advertising is of this type. It is an empathetic basis for making people feel better about themselves as an expression of their identity, as something they feel they need to feel good about themselves. There's this notion that we are utilitarian in our purchasing. Respectfully, I'd say that's wrong. We are not rational buyers, we are rationalizing buyers. And I'll get to that in terms of it keeps our heads from exploding. But people buy things more than anything else because deep down inside them, something says, this is for me. The next type of behavior is because it makes life better. And I was just thinking about this campaign, and I don't know how old everyone is, or their experience with this, but whisk is essentially this product that you would pre-treat collar stains before you threw them in the washing machine. Okay, and they used to say, "Do you have a ring around the collar?" And basically they got people to be worried about whether or not the inside of their shirt, which quite frankly nobody ever sees, is dirty. And of course it is dirty, and of course you need to make life better by buying whisk. If it's not a empathetic sale in terms of speaking directly to the person, it's almost always a rationalizing sale on the notion of fear of you need to buy this because it makes life better. At its basic premise, any utilitarian type of pitch, or one that's described as a utilitarian type of pitch, is really predicated on this making life better. The final bucket is it keeps our heads from exploding. One of the things that we have to just realize is, it speaks to me, it makes life better. Those are for big purchases, by and large, that kind of rationalizing logic. Nobody thinks deep about whether or not to buy a candy bar. Okay? Nobody thinks deep about, what type of bacon they're going to buy. We just acquire things because we need to acquire things, because our brain tells us we need to go out and acquire resources. Now, one of the things that happens, though, and this is where branding comes in. What branding does is it tells us and it makes life simple for us. So a person who gets really accustomed to buying Coca-Cola is going to continue to buy Coca-Cola because the idea of buying Pepsi makes their brain hurt. They have to then rethink what speaks to them and know, I'm just going to keep buying Coca-Cola. This is where mass media marketing creates brand and market share. And people will say, I love brand X. I can't imagine shopping at Target. I can't imagine shopping at Walmart, right? That's this bucket of, listen, I've made my choice in life and I don't want to think anymore about it. So they continue to buy because cognitive consistency is easier than having your brain explode. So those are really the three behaviors. Most of us that are creating landing pages are going to either be trying to speak to the audience on an empathetic level, which is what I recommend, or we're going to be making the case that whatever it is we're doing is going to make their life better. All of this boils down to essentially this premise, literally. A great landing page has a great premise. An effective landing page is the one that grabs me with the headline, engages me throughout the copy, and compels me to take action before I reach the offer. Great landing pages have strong premises. And the premise is it's just like in logic. The premise is the beginning supposition from which everything else is going to flow. Now, for most people, that premise is either accepted or rejected in the first 3 seconds of scanning your landing page. So you either made the sale or lost it in 3 seconds. That's how fast this happens. And that's because ultimately it's about good headlines. Now, again, going back to, it grabs me with the headline. Now, I know many of you've downloaded various how to write great headlines, and there are all these formulaic things about how to write great headlines. What you may not understand is all of those guides and whatnot, they're all stolen from Madison Avenue, essentially. And they're stolen from 3 people, David Ogilvy, John Caples, and George Lois, who's a friend of mine. And I want to show you where the headline formulas you're taking from come from, because it's some of the best advertising that's ever been created. And here's the thing, a landing page is really an internet version of a print ad. You may not want to think of it that way, but it functions very much the same way. Design-wise, the coupon, you'll see in some of these, it really is very simple in terms of the same 6 elements that we talked about in terms of headline and body copy and objections and the call to action. You'll see that in direct response print ads. So let me just show you a few of these. David Ogilvy. David Ogilvy is probably one of the most well-known people in advertising. He's the only person that I'm aware of who became a billionaire through advertising. He has that distinction. One of his accounts was Rolls-Royce, and he had this very famous headline, at 60 miles per hour, the loudest noise in this new Rolls-Royce comes from the electric clock. That creates an immediate story and mental image of the benefit of a Rolls-Royce. Now it's funny, I look at this and it's a Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud. I don't know if you can see that here. $13,995. To get a sense, a person who would be doing exceptionally well in the 1960s when this was being sold would be making about $15,000 or $20,000 a year. So we're talking about a car that costs almost as much as the entire year's salary of some of the highest paid people in business. Another David Ogilvy one, very famous. It's mutiny to mix a gin and tonic without Schweppes. He created this image of the person, of the Schweppes person. Still continues to this day, by the way, the whole idea. It's mutiny to mix gin and tonic without Schweppes. Get you to read the rest of it. Reward your top executives with a sabbatical year in Britain on half pay. This was a very famous ad as well. Now, notice a few things, though, over here, right? He's got a headline. He's got body copy. You can't read it, but in the body copy, it deals with objections. And then over here, guess what? This is the call to action. Okay? This is a landing page to get people to put their senior executives on sabbatical in Britain for half their salary. You got to read the article to figure out why that's the case, okay? This is by far the most famous ad probably in the history of advertising. John Caples. They all laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play, this is a prototypical direct response print ad, and it is all the elements of what a landing page would be now. Okay, there's a call to action. You would actually cut this thing out, mail it in. It dealt with objections. There was body copy. If you're noticing, all of these headlines, they're not the 22 secrets to whatever, right? But they all get you immediately drawn into what is it they're talking about and why should I pay attention. We're going to talk about really the 4 elements of what makes these headlines effective. Here's another John Caples ad. After he did the music school, the American Music School, he did this famous artist schools. You know, we're looking for people who like to draw. This is a landing page. You could see this digitized. I don't know how many people would want to buy art school that way, but this is about as close to a native digital ad in print as you would ever see. Another John Caples ad, and he said he'd write every day. It's for toothpaste. Now, granted, it's for Colgate. Now, granted, it's for a comic book. Okay, so it's drawn in that style, but it's a very strong headline. It's, by the way, it's This Speaks to Me is the mechanism for this. Okay, you have to appreciate, I think, the context of the 1950s. Jack Wittrup, and she gave me a Zippo. It's one of the best headlines in advertising. My good friend George Lois, who is the Olivetti girl. I've joked with him that I guess I've never seen secretarial work look so exciting. We're pushing leotards. Don't give up the ship. That's the real headline of this. You have to understand George often liked to provoke people on sex, race, and class. He still does, by the way. When You Got It, Flaunt It was one of the most successful campaigns for Braniff. It's a headline that got people to pay attention to an airline. Let's talk about what, headlines are 85% of the landing ad. So let's talk about in a serious way what a headline actually is. A great headline is an ad. A great headline summarizes the entire proposition and advertisement in just a few words. The benefit, the problem, the this speaks to me moment, the promise of new beginnings, the promise of better tomorrows, the chance to be happy and free and investing my time in listening to you is going to be well rewarded. And it all happens in seconds. That's what your headline has to do. It's hard. But that is where the battle is won or lost on your landing page. There are 4 elements to a great headline. Number 1, it captivates with a big idea. Especially now with so much fluff out there. If you don't have a big idea in whatever it is you're going to present to me, you're going to get ignored. Now, I don't mean the big idea's got to be so big it appeals to everyone on the planet. But whatever you're talking about to your audience or your intended niche, it better be like the biggest idea since sliced bread to them. So incremental change, or I'm going to help you a little bit more, those aren't big ideas. Those are, I'm going to be number 2 in the market, which means you're going to get ignored. The great headline has as its core a captivating big idea. Second element, it's true. It's genuine. You'll feel it. When you write the headline, you'll be like, yes, this is true. And the people who read the headline, who scan it and look at it, yes, this is true. Now, part of the thing, like with the Olivetti girl, it doesn't have strong brand truth. It just really doesn't. And some of the others don't have strong brand truth. But Braniff, When You Got It, Flaunt It, that was so successful because Braniff was very much about ostentatious display. It had brand truth. When you think about, when I sat down at the piano and I started to play, You have to read that entire ad, but it had strong brand truth in that if you got good at music, playing the piano, you could be the life of the party. It had brand truth. If it has strong brand truth, the second step, but the third element of a great headline is, then I want to internalize it. I want to make it part of my identity. I want to read a good headline as much as you want to write a good headline. And if it reaffirms who I am, what I want, what I'm doing, telling me that I'm okay, telling me to keep doing what I'm doing, even better. The headline has to make me want to internalize it. Now, it's hard to do all three of these things. Have a big idea that has strong brand truth and makes me want to internalize it. At the very minimum, you got to have a big idea and it's got to have brand truth. Not every idea you're going to want to internalize. I mean, even some of these things that we're going to show you, that I'm going to show you, that it's going to be, very good landing pages. It's not like I want to internalize the idea of surveys. I'll show you some really good survey software companies that have really great landing pages. It's not like I want to internalize the idea of surveys, but I'm willing to internalize it enough that I'm willing to buy it. So if nothing else, you got to get them to internalize it to the point they're willing to invest in it. The final thing that you really have to realize and be prepared to deal with is the headline's entire function is to get me to read the next line. And the function of the next line is to get me to read the next line after that. And so on and so forth until you ask for the sale. But more than anything else, a great headline gets me to read the rest of the ad. And if it doesn't, you're wasting your time. So don't hide the surprise in the headline. I need to hear the benefit, the aha moment, the thing that's going to shock me right up front. Otherwise, you're wasting my time. So presuming you get them to read the headline, presuming you get them to read the rest of the ad, everything that comes after that is about building rapport. So going back to our formula here, it engages me throughout the copy. Whoops. Now, I could write, we could do an entire seminar about how to write engaging copy. Okay, I don't have the time to go through all of that. If you get a strong headline, your body copy can be mediocre and you'll still convert better than you are now. That's the reality. Okay, good copywriters get paid primarily for writing great headlines, not from writing stellar body copy. Even David Ogilvy used to say 85% of your writing time should be spent on your headline. Okay. That said, there is a process that I use that every copywriter I've ever dealt with uses to write engaging copy. Number one, you got to know who you're talking to. You got to know your avatar. You can't write a sales page to someone you have no idea who they are. Excuse me. You have to know what motivates them. You have to know who they are, what their mindset's going to be when they come to the page, what their deep-seated fears are. You have to know who they are. You can't write engaging copy in the dark. You got to know who they are. The second difference, and this is the primary difference between an okay landing page and an exceptional landing page, is you talk about benefits, not features. And I've said this several times, I know, to everyone I talk to. Nobody buys the drill, they buy the hole. So what the landing page has to be about is about what's in it for them. Not, you want to make a sale. Everybody understands that part. whether it's getting an email or selling a product or getting them to pay attention to your issue or whatever. Everybody understands that part. The question that has to be answered really is, what's in it for me? So whether it's emotional or to solve a problem or to make life better, nobody buys rationally. They rationalize what they buy. So you have to begin with, what are you going to give me to rationalize fulfilling emotionally what I want to accomplish? And the best way to do that is you talk about benefits, not features. Most people want to talk about features because features are easy to talk about. It's red, it's blue, it goes beep, it has 6 wheels, it has the... That's all great. Nobody buys on that basis. That's not engaging copy. That's why nobody reads the back. You know, if you get like car brochures, nobody looks at all that stuff in the back about all the, you know, benefits and the, you know, passive restraint, this, that, and the other thing. Everybody wants to look at all the pictures and, you know, everyone having fun up front because that's the benefit of buying a new car. Engaging copy has a seductive value proposition. You have to engage me throughout. If your headline sucks, so's the rest of it. So that's why the headline's so important. If you can't get me in those first 3 seconds, you're not going to get me in the next 3 seconds. So your headline is kind of the glue that's going to hold everything together. So everything else that comes after that headline better be consistent with whatever you promised me in the headline. And I do see that, where people will write body copy that's like from a different advertisement than the headline I just read. And you see that all the time too. It's funny, right? I mentioned Outbrain before. They're like the kings of that. They write killer headlines and then you get to the content and it's awful, right? You feel like you got sucker punched. You got to maintain that value proposition throughout. And the final step is you got to edit and optimize. The faintest ink is better than the brightest memory. Don't throw away any of your drafts, ever. You may need it later. Make multiple iterations. Read the various iterations to yourself. Share them with others. Solicit people's feedback. When you get to the draft that makes sense, you'll know it. It takes time to develop that instinct, but this is what copywriting is about, and this is what engaging copywriting is about. So you will go through the process really of value proposition, edit, and optimize. That this is kind of a loop where you'll edit, and then you'll see, well, am I better? And then you'll edit, well, am I better? You know, you'll edit again, am I better? It's usually, you know, not, you know, unless you're like the Mozart of copywriting, the chances of you nailing it the first time, pretty much 0. So be prepared to edit and optimize. And you want to optimize on the basis of behavior. Either you want deep empathy, or you want them to believe life's going to be better, or you want them to take some sort of action. And so your copy needs to be constantly marching people towards that. Those are the steps to writing engaging copy. Okay. That leads us to design. Now I want to have a moment of frank talk here about design. I'm not going to lay out for you exactly how you make and design a landing page, because that's kind of like answering, how do you build a house? Well, what kind of needs does the house have? My frank advice is this, though. Unless you're a designer, unless you actually know what you're doing in terms of design, don't freelance, you know, do that yourself. Don't just decide, well, I'm going to design a landing page cold. Use templates. Use a designer. Okay, there is a flow, and one of the things we are going to talk about is page design elements, you know, just like we'd say, look, if we're building a house, we need a foundation, we need walls, we need windows, we need doors, we need roofs. There are those elements for landing pages as well. but use templates. Most of the people that design landing page templates, they have more than a rudimentary understanding of what design looks like. And don't try to get too cute and clever unless you really know what you're doing. Because I've seen too many pages where I look at it and the aesthetic is so awful, it gets in the way of the message. So keep it clean, keep it simple, and ask yourself, if you really want to do a complex design, or you really want a highly stylistic design, then quite frankly, you need to get somebody who's a professional designer involved, because that is a skill that takes a lifetime to understand. That said, there are 6 design elements of landing page design. We've talked about most of these. 4 seconds. The whole landing page is going to be absorbed in 4 seconds. Then there are elements of contrast and color, which we're going to talk about. Clarity and white space. By far, this is the most common error that I see, is clutter, too much on a page, too confusing, no flow. So we're going to talk about clarity and white space. Closely related to clarity and white space is direction and flow. Then 2 ideas you may not have heard of. One is encapsulation and the other is text flow and understanding directional cues. All of these elements come together to make an effective landing page. And these elements primarily focus on the styling of the headline, copy, the supporting, and asking for the sale. So let's talk about some things you probably haven't heard of. And you can use these things in template selection or in evaluating designs that designers may bring you. The most common thing that I see is there's no encapsulation. What is encapsulation? Well, on this side we have no encapsulation, and on this side we have encapsulation. Things are put in boxes. Encapsulation is useful because it structures how our eyes move around on the page, and it highlights what's important and what's not. And very closely related to the idea of encapsulation is the use of color and contrast. Obviously, if you look at the one that's orange, not even be able to read the rest of these 2 images, this one is more visually entertaining than this one. So proper use of color. And again, most of the templates that I've seen, if you're using Unbounce or Lead Pages or, Thrive Themes or somebody like that, somebody that's doing this professionally for a living and they're selling it as a product, these things are all baked in. But pay attention to these elements. You can change them to fit your needs, but you do want encapsulation, you do want color and contrast. And I'll show you how it works on composited pages here in a minute. Direction and flow. Now, without cues, our eyeballs, our brains will develop direction and flow. If you give directional cues, our brains understand the directional cues and will submissively follow the directional cues. So, to a certain extent, you can direct the conversation by putting in directional cues. Now, the way that this page would be scanned without the directional cues is your eyes would almost always be drawn to this and then go straight down. Whereas with the directional cues, you're going to go headline, headline to call to action. Let's see what this looks like. So I have landing pages for you to look at so you can now see where these things are at play. White space, color and contrast, encapsulation, direction and flow. It's all here. Direction and flow. Read this, then read this. This is encapsulated. It's a different color. The click now button is a different color. It's a different color from all of the colors on, but it's complementary. There's a great use of white space. It's not cluttered. I can figure it out in 3 or 4 seconds. Invest in wine. I made 60% in 3 years. Click now. Right? You can get that in 3 seconds. It's a good landing page. Okay, man packs again. Doesn't have all the elements and it's not as effective. They do have encapsulation down here. They do have contrast and color. It's a little weird. Not real keen on the green. Okay. They also have visual encapsulation in that it breaks up where you have this and then this and then this, right? The sections. But there's no flow beyond, essentially they're relying on natural flow, which is you're going to stare at her, you're going to stare at the headline, and then you're going to click. It could actually be designed better. Whereas opposed to Basecamp, again, expert design and flow. Your eyes start here, and you read down, and then you go over, and then you read down, and it's the sale. And they've got a headline, so you're going to go headline, graphic, headline. They use fonts. They've got things encapsulated so that you can digest it. It's a really solid landing page. And now we come to the final element of this that we're going to talk about, which is you got to ask for the sale. And that, it's funny, when I talked about this with some of my colleagues, they said, do I need to really talk about this? And I said, yeah, because I actually see landing pages where it's subscribe now. It's a very generic kind of sale that doesn't reinforce the benefit. You have to really think about what is it you're trying to sell and what you're asking for. Okay, that's all a part of this design where it's conversion-centered design. So to review, right, are reasons why people buy. It speaks to me. It makes my life better. Keeps me from having a mental breakdown. All right. In terms of asking for the sale, the strength of success of your sale really boils down to one factor. The difference between a person who visits and a person who becomes a customer lies in matching the desire of the customer at that moment with the relevance of the advertisement. Here's Fluid Surveys. It's a great landing page. It actually gets even better as you go below the fold. Online survey software at its best. We're the best there is. Is that true? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Sign up for Pro, start for free. She looks happy. You're reinforcing me that this is a legitimate sale. I've got all these trust builders down here. Put my info in, boom, start for free. Very straightforward in asking me for the sale. Very much saying this will make your life better. Am I gonna, am I gonna have a this speaks to me moment? Probably not. But there's no ambiguity. And actually, they ask for the sale a couple of times. Buy it, get started for free, get started for free, get started for free, ask for a demo, here's a phone number. I mean, they're asking for the sale multiple different ways based on what you may be most responsive to. But there's no ambiguity about what to do, and it reinforces online survey software at its best, and I get to start for free. That's awesome. It isn't get it now. It isn't subscribe now. There is a great, after the webinar, I'll include this in my follow-up email, there is a great article by copy hackers about reducing button friction. And essentially, you have to reinforce the good feeling on the button. Otherwise, subconsciously, you reduce conversion. This page is all above the fold, and it tells the whole story inside a few seconds with the design. Slack. Slack has rather bold advertising in how they go about this. They have bold landing page design. That said, it works for them because of who their customer is. This is a good landing page because it's got a good headline. So yeah, we tried Slack. Now granted, it's a headline that is very much deep in the context of the individuals who are using Slack. Okay, and there's this video to watch. There is encapsulation. It could be better. There is encapsulation. It's laid out visually so that you go like this in terms of your scanning. They ask for the sale, sign up for free, or take the tour. And if you're already a member, sign in. It's not quite as strong as the Fluid survey people. This is much stronger, but it's not bad. And given who they're trying to sell to, it's a decent landing page. MailChimp, easy email newsletters, sign up for free. Very strong design. Patreon, be a patron of the arts. Join us. Okay, it's not, again, you have to think about your button copy. You want to reinforce the good feeling. You want to reinforce this speaks to me. You want to reinforce it's going to make my life better. Now, when you actually go to this page, there's a video. Basically, this is a video in the background, so it engages you right away. But for their audience, who quite frankly are going to be largely composed of nonlinear thinking creatives, this is a perfect landing page. It asks for the sale. It's designed stylistically well. It's got a very high aesthetic. It immediately engages you because of the video. And you get to be with people like you. This speaks to me. This is an ad that essentially is this speaks to me. Join us. So to review, and that's kind of the end of my presentation. I've been talking for about an hour, but to review, you really, let's go back to the beginning here. So to review, your landing page design, most people are doing it for either lead gen or for making a sale, which means you either have to speak directly to the customer at a very fundamental level where they go, wow, this person gets me, or you have to make the argument of, this is going to make my life better. So you have to understand what behavior is going to motivate the conversion. I've given you strategies to think about and write good headlines. You can definitely use the formulaic approach, but what's going to go into those Mad Lib blanks boils down to, do you really understand who you're talking to, and can you tell that story in 8 words or less? We've talked about what it takes to build rapport, which boils down to, again, continuing to speak empathetically to your intended audience. In terms of your creative design and whatnot, and in terms of driving conversion, it's all got to be about your action. You're driving people towards an action. And if you lose sight of that, you're going to suffer in conversion. These pages, even the ones I introduced early on, they all have very strong conversion funnels. And they don't get in the way of the sale. Especially, again, Basecamp. I love Basecamp. Go take a look at 37 Signals and all of their stuff. They're very good at conversion and designing good pages that convert. Outbrain, again, looking at things now. What are the people who are going to use a syndication product? What do they want most? Traffic. directional cues, encapsulation, a clear call to action. These are the elements of what makes for a solid landing page. So with that, let me go to the end here. With that, I'll open it up to questions here. Whoops. I'll open it up to questions here. And what I'll do is if you raise your hand, I will unmute you, or you can type your question. It's up to you. Let's see here. Six questions. Okay. What is a good rate of conversion for a landing page? Well, it's a good question. You'll get a lot of different answers from people. I think the best non-industry specific answer is the rate of conversion has to be strong enough that the advertising is delivering on a decent return on investment. For most people, you know, I've seen, okay, well, let me just give you ranges. If you're a big mass market product and you don't have a tight fit with your audience, okay, you sell, your Lipton's tea. A conversion rate on that might be 2 or 3%. If my conversion rates, I've gotten conversion rates as high as 75%. Conversion, if you're not converting at least 20%, I think for most people, if you're doing a lead generation activity and you're sending targeted traffic to the page, then you should be getting at least 20 to 30%. That means 2 or 3 in 10 are saying, yeah, this is something I want. So if you're sending targeted people to your page and you're not convincing at least 2 out or 3 out of 10, that's not good conversion. There's something wrong with the page. If you're going with people cold, I wouldn't expect 20 to 30%, although I have, if you really have a really good avatar, you will get that high. At a minimum, I wouldn't accept conversion rates lower than 20% unless you're a mass product. And I think anything over 50%, it's going to be tough to improve on. Okay, let me take a look here at some of the others. Okay, for people who sent me their landing pages, I'll respond via email. I will get a chance to look at them. Some of them came in late, and I'll have to look at them again. Let's see. So Paul is saying to me, I'm giving a free ebook and I'm having a conversion rate of around 33%, and I'm not sure whether to change the landing page or not. 3 out of 10 with with targeted traffic isn't terrible. What you'll want to do is A/B test. And the places that I would A/B test against the control would be the headline and the conversion copy. Okay, so changing your headline to something different that's, you think, a bigger idea or more closer to the big truth would be one thing. And then, it's funny because simple things like Ollie Gardner, I reached out to, and he's the guy who runs Unbounce. He sent me some stuff that they had written about how even simple things like trust builders in terms of how you write your email no spam language can affect outcomes, and not insignificantly, by like 20%, okay, in terms of sign up. So, he was like, you should pay very close attention to anything around the actual button and test there. Okay, so Anne is saying, at its core, aren't we tapping into the dissatisfaction and capitalizing on greed and or lust that is part of human nature, and then inflaming that into, I must have this desire? Yes, that's the entire point of advertising. So yes, I would agree with that. There's a couple of different strategies in advertising. If you're going to do the this speaks to me, you know, motivation behavior, generally you have two motives. You can either aggravate the problem and then present a solution, or, you know, you can do the love at first sight, this is what you've been waiting for type of approach. It is, you're trying to demonstrate your value in your landing page. But what you have to, I think, acknowledge is it ain't about you, it's about them. And so you have to demonstrate your value in a way that they internalize it from their own perspective. So you can't talk about you. You have to talk about what you can do for them. Okay, hold on. Let me just see here. In copywriting, I've studied recommending a benefit in the headline, problem headline. It sounds like I lean towards benefit, although the entire premise needs to be in the headline. So in the piano example, it's not the words, it's the image that grabs the person who wants to be the life of the party and loves music. Exactly right. All of Capel's ads and headlines were about painting a mental picture of the benefit that the audience deeply wanted. Okay. I've used this example before, but you can use a few number of words to create a mental story very quickly. Baby shoes for sale, never worn. You instantly craft a mental image about what's that about. Caples was a master at that, because the notion of introverts who wish they were the life of the party would instantly look at that headline and craft in their own mind a story. And it's tough to do this with what most people are trying to sell, but if you can think about for a moment, what is the proposition? If I could wave a magic wand and do whatever my customers say they wanted, what would that look like? Inside that answer is the kernel of truth of whatever in the headline is going to be the strongest. Now, in some cases, it's alleviation of a fear. In some cases, it's I want to benefit. Okay, the difference between benefit and fear, by the way, in my opinion, is framing. Okay, when I everyone laughed, but when I sat down on the piano and started to play, that comes very close to talking about the fear of being ignored or embarrassed, but it gives the benefit of no, you won't be. Okay, you could rewrite that headline. I don't know how you do it off the cuff, but you could rewrite that headline something to the effect of don't be a wallflower and get ignored at the party again. Wouldn't necessarily be as strong. So Ling asks, how important is an outstanding image on landing pages? Well, from my own research on imagery, the image is more important than the headline. That's something that people, copywriters, and is not part of the generally accepted notion. My own research suggests that a headline is a headline comes second in terms of internalization in those first few moments. Your average picture can be assimilated by your reader inside of 13 milliseconds. So before your reader has even read your headline, the reader's subconscious has made a determination about the interest of the page based on its design, aesthetics, and the image. Okay, so if you'll notice, I mean, look, okay, Manpax is selling underwear. Are they really? Okay, no. That's not what they're entirely focused on. Now, granted, it's cheap and superficial, but it's there's a reason why and there are actually better images you could use other than her. The smiley face on the base camp image is actually a strong image. People respond to faces, even faces that aren't real. So imagery matters. It matters a lot. I actually have a methodology for dealing with images, and I'll add, after the replay, I'll add the links. I wrote a piece for Jeff Bullis about picking good imagery, and I think that might help. Let's see. Hold on, I'm trying to read here. Okay, I think that's all the questions. Oh wait, what do I think of Kilstein's NLP techniques for copy? I have no idea. Let me would you be willing to talk about it? TM, if you're still on. Say yes or no. I'll unmute you if you are. Okay. I'll answer it offline then. No, it wasn't your question, Ann. I think it was it? No, I'm trying to, it's hard. I don't want everybody speaking at once, but this is, yeah, it wasn't you, Ann. It was somebody else. I guess, yeah, thank you to the people that are, I realize you may have to go. I do appreciate people attending. Thank you for the kind words from people that are leaving. I'm just not familiar with it. I mean, I am familiar with neuro-linguistic programming, but I'm not familiar with what she has to say. Be happy to talk about it offline. In terms of images and design, I mean, I guess I will just say one thing, most people are not going to be shooting their own images. I will say this, if you get to this point where you're using more than 4 images, in terms of like stock photography, you might want to seriously think about shooting your own images at some point, because, if you're using Shutterstock or you're using, especially if you're using somebody like Getty Images or something like that for your landing pages, you're going to start spending enough money that as you approach, $700, $800, $1,000, you can actually get a freelance photographer to shoot whatever you want. And then it'll be your imagery, let's see. Lots of people use beaches. Is that good? I have no idea what we're talking about. No problem. Understand people got to go. Oh, on beaches on the landing page. I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine, he handled Carnival Cruise for a while. And he had this, the image that you want has to be connected to the benefit, okay? It has to demonstrate essentially the benefit or be integral to telling the story and advancing the storyline. So he made these pages, he's making these landing banner ads, which were like micro landing pages, right? Back when banner ads actually mattered. And he had these pages where he had basically pictures of people like lounging on beaches and whatnot. And they did awful in comparison to pictures of the boat and pictures of the boat on the ocean. And his whole thought was, well, I think ultimately what it boiled down to was people had an expectation about what advanced the story, and a woman laying on the beach was not, unique enough to the advancement of the story. So whatever imagery you're going to choose needs to advance the value proposition of the story. Okay, let's see. What's my thought on trying to sell designing websites that convert? My first thought is often heal thyself, physician. When I look at a company, well, like for example, I actually use companies in the examples that do that. Here, I mean, let me go to, let's see. Let me go to, well, okay, Conversion Lab. If you're going to sell me landing pages that convert or websites that convert, you better walk your talk, I guess is my first thought. So you got a pretty high bar because you really can't make any mistakes yourself. And you know, you have to showcase your wares and how you actually execute for yourself. In the case of selling something that converts, you know, Unbounce obviously does this. You have to have strong design yourself, and you're going to have to really be constantly dealing with objections. And you're not going to be able to deal with objections in a straight up way saying, here's all your objections and I'm going to deal with them. You're going to constantly be dealing with the subconscious objection, especially because the audience that's going to buy that product is going to already have a fair amount of knowledge. Let's see. Never sell with it. Okay, so Anne is saying, in interesting food for thought, a well-known designer in branding advocates never sell coffee with a picture of a person drinking coffee because you're selling the smell. You know, when you wrote that, I thought about, in my mind, famous advertisements for Hills Brothers and Folgers and other coffee makers. The designer's probably right. As I'm thinking about how coffee is depicted visually, the image is usually of a woman grasping the cup with two hands with her nose over the cup, right? And so there's some truth, I think, in that statement about what is being visually depicted. You don't show people drinking coffee. You do show them smelling coffee because smell is something that you can trigger. You know, if you ask someone, tell me what coffee tastes like, they'd have a certain answer, and I think it would be difficult for them to answer it. If you ask people, what does coffee smell like, that is probably going to resonate much more deeply than what does it taste like. So again, going back to the notion of in your storyline, you know, in your headlines, what's the brand truth? What coffee smells like has a much stronger truth than what coffee tastes like. So my thought is that this designer is probably right. I mean, as I think, it's funny, I have pitched coffee accounts. And as I'm thinking about the pitches I've done for them, I pitched Dunn Brothers, which is here in Minneapolis. They stole my idea, by the way, in the end. They threw me under the bus, stole my idea, and didn't hire me. But as I think about all of that stuff, it was pitching feelings and sensations much more than the act of drinking coffee. Let's see. Is it better to have less than more on a landing page? Yes. I guess if I have to choose, yes. And the reason why is a cluttered page is an ignored page. If we just look at the page we have here, it's pretty basic. You know, if you look at a lot of these pages, they're minimalistic. You need to have enough to tell the story, because if you can't, you're not going to be able to make the sale. But if you consider something like Trulia, there's only 4 elements on that page. So, you know, Shakespeare said that essentially brevity is the soul of wit, I'd strive for less versus more. Now, that said, the amount of less versus more has to be proportional to the level of sale you're asking for. I'll tell you this story. A friend of mine in another group, he wanted me to look at his landing page. He was trying to sell coaching for life coaching, okay? And he had a landing page that went on for miles. Okay, it was just on and on and on and on and on and on about all the benefits I'm going to get. And then when it came time to buy the thing, it was only like $79. I was like, wow, you just spent $50,000 worth of advertising to sell a $5 product. Okay? Keep that in mind, that, the more complicated the sale is, the more trust that's required to build the sale. That's going to determine length more than anything. Okay, let's see what else we got here. How to decide when to use block letters, fontology, basically it's a question on fontology. How to use, when to decide to use block versus lowercase on landing pages, etc. There are resources online to look at fontology and style. I would study them. Typically, without serif, sans serif is easier for speed. Serif is apparently better for understanding. It's not uncommon to have serifed fonts for body copy and non-serif fonts for headlines. Trulia obviously has a super stylistic page where they're kind of like E.E. Cummings, where very little is capitalized. But, don't make your reader think too much about it, okay? Don't get so cute that your reader can't figure out what the heck's going on. So make it clean, make it readable. I mean, in the end, you want them to read this, so don't get in the way of that. Let's see. I think that's everything. Oh, wait, there's more. Yes, and going back to the coffee cup, it conjures the image of the trigger, she said. Yes, I agree with that. Well, if there are more, I'll answer one more question here. Like I said, I have a hard stop at 11:30 my time. I want to thank everybody for coming. I do have one question for you guys, and feel free. What I'm thinking of doing with these webinars, I did this as a practice. I've delivered training, at conferences and things like that on various topics. Is this a series that you would see valuable enough if there was something like this every month or every week, and it was a 1-hour discrete thing? Is that something valuable enough to pay for in your mind? Yes, Ling, I am going to have the slides. Everything's going to be recorded. So there'll be a page where you can download everything. But if you could let me know if this would be something, this type of thing, not just on landing pages, but on, marketing generally, that would be of value to you. If you would drop me a line or, let me know, I'd appreciate it. I'm trying to figure out, and I've thought about in terms of webinars, people often want to just sell, now buy my course. I'm not interested in that. I do think I can actually deliver just value right out of the gate. And I would be thinking of selling these webinars for, I don't know, $10 a person, or something like that. But yes, it'll be a PDF link. But then you would get everything. You would get the recordings. I would do them live. You'd be able to, ask questions, and then there'd be all the materials afterwards. If you think that's something of value, and I'm not saying, I'm going to do that. I'm just curious whether or not people think that's something of value and something they're willing to pay for. I do know people that do it, and they seem to do okay. I'm just curious as to what your ideas are. So some people are saying a monthly subscription. That's funny because that issue has been brought up to me a couple of times. that the way to do that is a monthly subscription. And it's funny because the guy that has kind of encouraged me to do this, Chris Brogan, he now charges a monthly subscription. He charges $20 a month for basically all you can eat on the webinars he's done, and then he does, I think, 2 a month. So it's every 2 weeks he's got a new webinar on stuff you can use, in your business. Any other questions? So what I'll do is I will put this on Vimeo. You'll be able to watch it. I'll have a landing page where you can download the materials, and you can then take what you need from there. You can always email me at bryandelmonte.com or bryan@clickify.com. And if there's anything I can do to help you, just reach out. You already connect with me on Facebook, and please invite other people to the Facebook page. Would love to grow and have more people involved, and invite people. I'm happy to have them in. And I'm going to do a couple of these until I get the hang of it. But I really appreciate everybody being engaged today. And let me just see here. I did get another question here. People like my slides. Well, I must admit, I have good help. my partner is a pretty good designer. But I walk my talk. I can spot good art, but I can't necessarily create it. Let's see. You want to hire him? Okay. No, if you're really serious about that, I can definitely connect you to. Okay. Well, listen. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Again, thanks for coming. I'm glad this was useful, and have a good weekend. I'll have this stuff up later today. Thanks, everybody.